I'm aware of some impacts that have occurred.
Some damning evidence coming out through photographs.
Australia Coal has admitted the mining has contributed to the problem and says it's working with landholders and the government to fix.
Much of it is starting to die, and part of the creek has actually dried up. And that occurred when the mining
Given that it has already happened, we're hearing that those cracks have already occurred and the effects have already been felt. What can be done now to remedy the situation?
In the state in relation to our resources.
No way should open cuts have been allowed within 30 metres of those. Surely that riverbank mining company that makes millions of dollars profit should be willing to do the right thing.
Mining resources of this state are driving the economy.
Rivers everywhere are the lifeblood of communities, and without their health, this, more than any other thing, will be the demise of rural areas. Coal mines, no coal mines. You have to have healthy rivers.
The most important thing we have in Australia is water. We have so little of it.
We need to raise community awareness. We need to raise Australia-wide awareness of the impacts that coal mining are having on these naturally valuable areas.
All you can do is hope you can protect the rivers.
You know, we're getting $60 or $70 a tonne or whatever we're getting. But in the long term, what's the legacy?
No one has argued that mining should never occur, simply that we need to carefully plan what areas mining is appropriate in and what areas it isn't.
Get them to not mine under the rivers or even use a different mining method. Go away from the longwall mining.
Coal can be extracted where it's environmentally sustainable to do so, but those sensitive habitats and our valuable natural river systems are preserved.
The government should be working with the local community, not just giving the go-ahead to the company.
This is the story of communities across New South Wales who have come together to protect rivers from the detrimental effects of coal mining.
Last year we formed Rivers SOS because we realised this is happening all over New South Wales, and groups are springing up everywhere who are really concerned about what the New South Wales government is allowing to happen.
These communities are united by their common stories about the water in their rivers disappearing. They hope to protect the rivers from the poorly regulated mining operations.
And we've just got the one aim, which is to ask the New South Wales government to mandate a safety zone of at least 1 kilometre round all our rivers.
At present, 11 rivers in New South Wales are currently under threat from future mining operations. All of these mines will go so close to the rivers that cracking and pollution are inevitable. Three generations of the Williams family have lived on the Cataract River. Mike Williams has seen firsthand the damage done by mining. In the mid-1990s, their beloved river turned red.
It was brought to my notice by my nephew, Rick Williams, who raced up. He said, "Uncle Mike, our fishing hole's gone." And this seemed to just happen overnight. And there was just dead fish, all species, Murray cod, catfish, eel-tail catfish, silver perch, spiny-back lobsters, just all dead on the sunburnt rocks down there. So the water would go under part of the cracked river beds, and they'd come up downstream, and it would return to the surface in different areas with irons and clays and amidst heaps of bubbling gas, which did ignite on many occasions and set the river on fire. Naturally, we got onto the mines, having other parts of my family in the mines at the time, and I said, "There's something gone wrong here." And they said, "Oh no, we had Mr. Jim Armstrong come down straight away. He was their PR man at the time, or property manager, and he said, it's nothing to do with mining, it's got to be the drought." Well, since 1943, or call it 1950, when I'm old enough to remember then, we've had more severe droughts in this area than we've ever had before. Droughts, bushfires, we've had stock die everywhere. But the river held up with groundwater. There was always a trickle of water. It just went overnight, the whole thing was dead.
Things were so bad along the Cataract River that several families took the EHP to court.
The parties weren't looking for monetary compensation. We just wanted this thing stopped or not to happen again.
The families won the case in 1998. The mining warden from the trial concluded 80% of the damage to the river was the result of longwall mining. Only 20% was due to drought. These court findings clearly demonstrated the mine was at fault. The information reaching the public and our politicians remains distorted.
The studies that I have available suggest that mining has not been the most significant impact upon the health of some of our streams, and in fact the one on the Cataract River some time back suggested that in fact the major impact was things like agricultural runoff, lower environmental flows rather than mining, and in fact made it clear that mining wasn't a major source of any of the difficulties of the stream.
In actual fact, the cataract relies on 1.7 megalitres of water per day being pumped down the river. These current flow releases are not enough to keep the river flowing or maintain acceptable water quality. Mike is disappointed that their victorious day in court has not stopped the damage that mines are continuing to inflict on rivers in New South Wales.
Well, I certainly did think it would stop them damaging other rivers, or they should take notice of their mistakes and mine in different areas, or in fragile areas. They should change their practice, perhaps, but they've since then done a carbon copy at the Georges River at Appin, which is probably 3 kilometres from here, and direct as the crow flies, as you say.
I heard about the river being cracked at the cataract, but I suppose do you physically see it? It doesn't actually sink in. It's, you know, there's water in a river one day and there's no water in it the next day, and that's when it really sinks home that, you know, the effects that longwall mining actually does. The back of Appin, there's a place called Marnie's Hole, which was like a swimming hole for all the local kids. Just over there you can see all the new exposed sandstone. Once they mined under it, all that rock shell caved in to the actual water. They actually had a security guard down here for quite a few months to keep the kids and that away from it because it was so dangerous. The water level probably was another metre and a half higher than what it is now. A lot of the yellow orangey colour is the oxide that's coming out of the ground from where the riverbed's been cracked. It leaches up through the cracks, gets into the river.
Current mining plans along the Georges River undermine creeks and streams which flow into the nearby Nepean. BHP's next coal mine goes within 180 metres of the Nepean's riverbed. Their own consultants admit the mine's proximity to the river will fracture the riverbeds.
The cataract shows us that rivers can't be repaired. You know, it's damaged forever. Nothing will ever repair that river. And to see that happening again in the Nepean is just nothing short of criminal. If you go up to the mouth of the cataract, where the cataract meets the Nepean, it just smells like a dead river. It is a dead river, the cataract. It's a milky, sort of polluted, smelly stench that comes with the water down there. The development application as it stands accepts that there will be effects on the river in terms of cracking, cliff, rock falls, gas emissions, all those things that to us are totally unacceptable. You know, it just spells more doom for the Nepean that's supposed to be the waterway of Sydney, really. You know, the whole of the Sydney Basin relies on the Nepean Hawkesbury in one way or another. It's very difficult to get people in urban areas to understand where the water comes from because it's not in their immediate area. But yes, if they only realise that the water that, you know, they're having restrictions that they don't like, and the water that goes into our rivers to make up for the loss from mining companies is coming from their dams. Well, we're hoping that the government and the minister, who ultimately gives the go-ahead or not for this particular project, will insist that the company change their plans and move back from the river as far as possible. The government has to get it right in this instance because it'll be too late afterwards once the damage is done.
Major rivers further north in New South Wales are also under threat. the beautiful landscape surrounding the Mudgee region may be the next to disappear. This region is famous for its wine and honey and boasts a rapidly expanding tourism and fine food industry. Its natural environs are still relatively unknown, especially along the Goulburn River, with its stunning sandstone gorges.
This is the Drip, or the Great Dripping Wall. It has a lot of history to do with the local people, both Indigenous and European. The actual wall, Great Dripping Wall, drips from springs that are fed from groundwater back off the cliff. It is a very fragile formation in that it's overhang. The Longwall mine is proposing to come within about 200, 230 metres of this feature, and we're very concerned that any sort of ground movements that are instigated by the collapse of the Longwall will either fracture or crack this, could even, worst case scenario, bring it down. Even if it just cracks it, it could make it very unsafe for people to visit. And it is a really significant feature of, I think, of national significance, but at least of regional significance. We have people here who come to our accommodation and visit this area here, the Drip, Great Dripping Wall, and they sort of compare it on a par to Kakadu and the Blue Mountains heritage area. So there's lots of people that hold it in great regard, and I think any risk for mining is too much.
This will be the third coal mine affecting the Goulburn River.
Yulin coal mines started up in the mid-1980s, and the first thing they did was divert the river. This diversion was very unsympathetic with the whole area. It removed alluvial aquifers. It destroyed quite a section of the river. The result is that we have a very unstable, eroding channel, very unaesthetic, very ugly. Also, the sediment that collects on the bottom gets washed further down into the national park and down through these gorge areas here, and that affects the sandy base from the point of view of increasing the nutrients and hence the algae build-up. So we have an ongoing legacy of this diversion. They've now come back and want to put another mine in opposite this diversion and actually mine all the catchment that runs into the top end of the Goulburn, the Moolarben area, as well as underground mine up within far too close to these cliffs and gorges that are in this more wild section of the river. Mudgee is a very diverse economy anyway. It has tourism, it has farming, it has an abattoir, it already has an existing mine. And from the point of view of jobs, already I think the maximum amount of people could be employed by the two existing approved mines.
Actually, they've got to employ no locals. They've got to advertise it to locals, but they're not necessarily going to give us the job. They'll give us 2% of the work, which is really nothing. Unless you've got the qualifications, you won't get a start anyway. So, as in feeding the locals, none.
The area does have a future from the tourism point of view, but the water is one of its greatest assets, of far more value than the coal in the long term.
Mine sites can be remediated and should be remediated and rehabilitated properly. We are aware that there have been some problems in this area in the past. We believe that remediation in the difficult ones has been by and large successful.
The mining corporations claim that they can repair the damage to rivers via remediation techniques.
There have been a number of remediation techniques which have been attempted to reduce the damage from longwall mining to river systems. Those include grouting of cracks in riverbeds, also putting what are called vertical slots in some of the rock strata around riverbeds to reduce the stresses that are involved, and also environmental flow releases to make up for some of the lost flows as a result of bed cracking. Unfortunately, none of those techniques have yielded anything like the benefits that are required to restore a river to its proper natural functions. A classic example is Marnie's waterhole on the Georges River, where the vertical slot technique was attempted to prevent damage to that as a result of longwall mining activity, and unfortunately it wasn't as successful as one might have hoped. The water hole was still damaged and there was a loss of flows.
That's actually the hole they drilled and they plugged to seal the bottom of the bedrock.
Bottom of the bedrock.
So they, in theory, bring the water back to the top.
Which doesn't happen, of course.
It doesn't.
And in any case, filling riverbeds with grout or other types of compounds can hardly be seen to be a natural process, and it's really not helpful for aquatic ecosystems.
Did the BHP once. I said their remediation of the riverbed, what do they think? They sit on the right-hand side of God? I mean, you can't repair something that Mother Nature's taken years, billions of years to fix. I don't think you can repair a riverbed once it's cracked. But they think they can.
The only way to protect river ecosystems and the values of those areas is to manage things properly and prevent damage in the first place by not longwall mining under sensitive habitats.
What we've found generally, the information I have, is that some of this cracking is of a temporary nature in terms of loss of water, and that there's a self-healing process or self-remediating process. Where that hasn't occurred, for instance, along South Wambo Creek, the company carried out a $1.6 million remediation program, which I understand has been successful in addressing the particular problem.
The mining company has told the Minister that it's been successful. If you call success grass and trees, it is successful. And in effect what they're doing is actually burying our creek under a massive amount of sand, soil, silt and everything else. Well, where we're standing is actually in what used to be the backbone of the property. My grandfather bought it back around about 1923 for the fact that it did have a permanent stream. It's never let him down, never let anyone down, even right up to the point of mining. From there on in we've had a gradual demise of the creek. The mine was never allowed, according to consent conditions, to go anywhere near it, but they did.
The coal mine under Wambo Creek is just one of the 36 coal mines located in the Hunter region.
Well, when I first came to live in Singleton, which will be 50 years next year, it was a very lovely district with dairying along all the rivers and the creeks, and a community that pulled together. The mining industry came in a bang in the 70s, which was the beginning of the open cuts, and that was when the district started to be just blown apart. People were bought out, families were blown apart, the whole district was decimated with not just one mine, but there were so many different mines came into the area at the time.
There's a lot of mining in the Hunter Valley, and a lot of people who even live on the river, some of them work in coal mines. But there had never been any discussion of coal mining right in the reaches of the upper Hunter catchment until 2001, when we first heard that Bickham Coal Company were planning to put a big open cut right next to the Pages River.
Well, then about 25 years ago, a mine, longwall mine, under Bowman's Creek, and the owner of a property upstream of us discovered wonder in the creek when he went to cross it to find his cattle. Went walking upstream and found that the bottom had fallen out of the creek into the longwall.
The other thing I was concerned about, I said, you know, you're going to take all this water out. And they said, oh no, we might put water back. Now, 4 years ago, I didn't know what that meant. Putting water back, I remember thinking, oh, putting water back, but what quality water? So we don't want dirty, cold, saline, sulphurous water put back in our lovely, clean Pages River. And these are the sorts of things that I didn't know back in 2001 that I've and the community have had to learn about.
I could no longer utilise any of the alluvial soils along Bowman's Creek, and 2 mines upstream were allowed to discharge mine water 2 megalitres a day into the river, so that our irrigation water was so saline that some days we could never use it, and it reached a stage where we just couldn't stay there any longer.
When Bickham Coal Company first proposed to take out a bulk sample, the company that did their water assessment report said that they needed to pump out 250 megalitres, so 250 million litres of water when they extracted the coal, just for the bulk sample. Now, this was when we were in drought, and we held a public meeting and said, you have to be kidding. You know, this is more water than the entire water allocation of Murrurundi. They were a bit surprised that the community was so outraged about it. And a few months later, they came back and said, oh, sorry, got the numbers wrong. It's only 16 million litres we need to take out. So it went from 250 megalitres to 16 megalitres. This was another example of very casual figures that are being presented to the community, and how it's always been up to us to ask the questions.
So we had to eventually sell. Now, what annoys me and other people is that no compensation was ever offered to anybody who lost their water or lost the quality of their water.
We've been forced to appreciate it more, and that will be a good thing. I think it's always difficult when you have commercial interests conflicting, and the fact is, I'd say, particularly here on the Pages River, if you look at the development potential and the water availability, it's not equal. And this is what we've got to work out as a community. This is a resource that is here for all of us, and not one industry has the right to dominate its use.
After seeing what has happened in the Hunter Valley over the last 20 years, it astounds me that it is continuing to happen all over New South Wales, and these new exploration areas are being allowed to go ahead without any thought to what could possibly happen to the water in all these areas.
And I think mining companies know that they can break conditions and nothing's going to happen. So forget it. I want to see Bickham coal mines stopped. I'm not interested in going into discussions about a million conditions, living here with my fingers crossed. This is a coal mine at the head of the Hunter catchment, and it's not worth the risk.
Rivers SOS want the government to protect all rivers in New South Wales from the detrimental effects of mining. This can easily be achieved by legislating a minimum 1 kilometre safety zone around all rivers.
1 kilometre exclusion zone should be viewed as a sensible measure to prevent damage to these important habitats. They're a valuable community resource. There are significant costs to the community in terms of damage to these environments, and also in many cases Sydney's drinking water supply is being used to try and provide environmental flows to top up the lost water from these damaged rivers, so there are significant costs.
At 1 kilometre there is almost zero effect. We believe that rivers are too precious to play around with, and that they deserve exactly that.
Keep a kilometre or a couple of kilometres back from the rivers, or, like I said, change the mining procedure so it doesn't cause this damage to the rivers.
You can never restore the river to its former glory via remediation techniques. They're really band-aid measures and are no substitute for avoiding damage in the first place.
Should there be a 1 kilometre safety zone around rivers in New South Wales?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable request. 1 kilometre is not very far.
There's a lot of coal in the area. Why would you want to enforce that upon an area that's going to be disturbed?
There must be other ways of doing it. I'll just pray the cost of coal drops.
In 20 to 50 years' time, they won't want to burn coal because they'll have better fuel resources, and so they might as well sell the coal while they can.
We have to take a careful but rational and scientific approach to these issues, and not go and put in arbitrary 1 kilometre buffer zones around streams and creeks, which of course would reduce the resource dramatically.
Well, I just think that it's up to the people of Australia to say enough's enough. We must preserve what we have now and endeavour to fix the mess that the mining companies have made, and they must be made to do it.
Certainly the government gets huge revenue from these coal mines, and they're not going to lightly cast it aside. We have to prove to them, or at least to get the message across to them, how valuable these areas are. We need a bit of people power to give support to stop these sort of things going ahead.
We can't save the rivers that have been wrecked already, but at least we hope to stop more wrecking happening in future, because it's our stewardship. In this generation, we are the stewards of the rivers, and it's on our watch that this destruction is taking place.
It's the kids of the future, you know. They're going to see rivers without water in them.
This is where all of us have to ask ourselves, okay, if I really love the river, what am I doing about it? And will I speak up for it? Will I actually do something that proves that I care about it?
Get involved today. To find out how you can help save the rivers in New South Wales, visit Rivers SOS website at www.riverssos.com.